I'm going to pull up the slides for today. I hope everyone is doing well. Okay, cool. So, hi. Today we are going to be discussing how you can accelerate your career and get into Roblox development. But first, I'd like to share a video of my studio's work. Oh man, there we go. Okay, hello everyone. I would also like to share a bit about myself before we get started. My name is Anne Shoemaker. I'm also known as Myzta on Roblox. I have had 12 years of game dev experience, whether that be indie or part of a team. Some of the experiences that my studio have created are Mermaid Life and My Droplets, which have accumulated 150 million plays. Mermaid Life has also won a Bloxy for best use of fashion. And this year, I had the honor of joining the 30 under 30 list in gaming. And I founded Full Flower Studio in 2020, and we are a game production company that has worked in teams of 5 to teams of 20, where we create high quality experiences for the Roblox platform. So I will be starting off with the basics of game development, which are the core loop, prototyping, the art Bible, and planning. These tools will be necessary throughout your career. It's not super necessary for a game jam, but it will help you take your skills beyond the game jam. So the first part is the core loop. This is where you want to define an action that the player is going to perform in your game. Next, you're going to want to define what the reward will be for that player's action. And once the player gets the reward, you want to tell how it will expand that player's experience. So for my example here, you can chop a tree, and from chopping that tree, it allows you to craft an axe. And crafting that axe will allow you to discover a better tree and chop that down. Next, we'll get into prototyping. This is where you start developing the core loop that you have written out. And this is also considered the MVP, or the minimum viable product. This is where you want to test out the basic mechanics without all the bells and whistles of content. And you can take this time to iterate and adjust the rate of progression and make sure that things feel good. Roblox is a great place for prototyping, which is why I like to use it for my games. Next, we'll go into the art Bible. I used to not use art Bibles personally because I was kind of just like, let's just throw everything in the game. But I found that this is really useful because you're going to want to keep every artist on your team on the same page. And it also allows you to test your style and see how it will affect gameplay. Careful consideration of art can be just as important as gameplay because it all goes hand in hand. Next is the planning. I don't start off with a whole bunch of planning for like 3 to 6 months of development. I like to do that after I get the MVP done because then you're going to have an understanding if your game is fun. And that way you won't have to do all this planning and then realize a month later, like, I don't know if this game is really worth developing. But basically, after the basics of the game is done and you found the fun, you're going to want to commit to developing the long-term plan of your game, which generally you want to start with the end goal of your experience. And this means what it's going to look like on launch and what the play is going to be like. Then you're going to want to divide the end goal into short milestones that are playable. And I personally, after experiencing 3-month-long milestones, I think it's best to limit yourself to a month or less, because otherwise developers and designers can get lost in what the game actually looks like when you have to wait so long to play. And if you are pretty new to Studio and you have some basic needs, you can go to the Creator Hub, which is the best place to find basic tips. In the dev forum post for this challenge, they shared some great articles with the talk that you are watching today to get started. There will also be other talks in the coming weeks for more in-depth information on art and coding. Next, I'll be getting into some useful resources that you can use in your development. These are AI Assistant, plugins, and free assets you can use in the toolbox. The toolbox is great for prototyping because you can add easy flavor to your game, and there's lots of code at your disposal. So AI Assistant has surprisingly been very useful in my own development. It allows you to rapidly solve smaller problems like animating a C-frame, shuffling a table, or messing with the more complicated API that requires a lot of code. It is useful to have some coding knowledge beforehand because you don't always get what you expect and you will want to make adjustments accordingly. Next, I want to share some plugins that I personally like to use a lot in my development. And some of those include the brush tool, part 2 terrain, tool grip editor, the rain plugin, and 3D text. The brush tool allows you to put various assets in a folder, and you can brush them around in your world to create natural environments. And you can select assets to create clusters, so you're not limited to one asset. And there's lots of adjustments you can make as well, like changing the radius, the spacing, and the rotation. There's wobbliness and orientation as well. And now would be a good time to write down these different plugins, because I've watched talks and I've completely forgotten the names of things that seemed really useful. So I suggest writing these down if you find them interesting. Next, I want to share part 2 terrain. This allows you to use basically you put in a shape that you want to turn into terrain. Obviously, as you can see, it allows you to get precise shapes in smooth terrain. When you use the brush for terrain, it can be annoying and choppy and you don't always get the best results, which is why I think it's great to build your world using this feature. And then you can also use the brush later just to smooth things out and modify them to make them look a bit more natural. Another really great one is Meshbox. It allows you to take a mesh part and convert it into terrain. It allows you to create more complex environments if you have an easier time making 3D models rather than sculpting. The next one is the tool grip editor. This is where you basically can visualize how the tool is going to look in a player's hand without needing to touch the properties, because I've personally found the properties kind of confusing and annoying to use. I just like this feature because you can drag the arm to fit the tool properly. It's really cool. It's called Tool Grip Editor. Next is the rain plugin. This one isn't super necessary for all projects, but it's really cool because you can create moody scenes very quickly, creates cool vibes for your game. It also has a feature to not show up when you're under a roof, so that makes it pretty easy to add rain to an environment where there's a bunch of indoor buildings. Finally, one of the cool ones that I like to use is called 3D text. It allows you to take various fonts and write out cool words and create signs. You can also adjust the color and the material, and it's really great, but the one thing that kind of sucks is that you cannot translate it into other languages. So if you wanted to do something like that, you need to do probably a lot of coding and personally write out the text in a lot of languages. So that kind of isn't great, but it is cool, and it's called 3D text. Next, I want to get into one of the biggest lessons I have learned as a product manager, a game developer, and a game designer, and that is you want to think small. Overscoping can be detrimental to the success of your project. It can be costly, it can affect the team morale, and it most likely you will never see the end of your project, your game will never go live, and nobody wants that to happen because you never learn from the experience that you created. So some of the warning signs when your game is overscoping is having too many resources, having a lengthy timeline, and the cost of production is pretty heavy. I honestly think, in my personal experience, that 3-month-long projects are probably best because you probably don't have to put too much in your game. It allows you to learn pretty quickly about the game that you're producing and get it in front of an audience. I don't think large teams are necessary to create a great experience. I think large teams are a luxury. One developer can cost upwards of $6,000 a month to comfortably live and work full time for you. There is a saying in starting a company where unless you're making 1 million in returns in a year, you should not expand your team past 10 people. And I think this is a valuable lesson in games as well. Next is team morale. Good team morale is incredibly important for the longevity of your project because overscoping your project can cause high stress. You are expecting your team to handle more than they can deal with. You're creating too many mechanics and assets at once, and it can cause a dizzying feeling in your developers. Developers want a clear picture of what the launch will be, and taking too long to launch is going to cause burnout. The rewarding experience of sharing your work with an audience will be too far out of reach. And I think making a game is a game in itself. You want to provide rewards as fast as you can because it creates continued motivation. Next is you will never see the end because most likely if you're overscoping, you're going over budget. You want to think about the return on investment after launch. Earning a ton of money after launch is going to be difficult. When the production timeline is long, the team feels like they have endless amount of time to work. And so I don't know if they work as fast as they really could. Burnout can also slow down creativity and limit someone's full potential. The sooner you launch your experience, the sooner you can learn from your mistakes, and you will go further faster the more you learn. So you want to be able to find the fun first, which is why I expressed how important it was in the beginning of this talk to get the core of the game done. You want to prototype, you want to continuously test and adjust the prototype. You want to get your art Bible out of the way. You're going to want to create a vertical slice, which is basically all the art and the programming done so you can see what the game is in its full capacity, but not necessarily the full game itself. Then again, you want to test and adjust until you're happy with that. This is why game jams are so awesome because it allows you to figure out the games that you want to make. Your timelines are short. It forces you to quickly put together a fun experience. It is a faster way to create your experience and you'll learn from it quicker. And you are also potentially creating a hit experience from your game jam, so keep that in mind. So I also want to share some game jam tips because that's probably why you are all here today. Basically, the first thing to think about is having clearly defined tasks for your team members. So each individual team member should know what they're working on at all times. Personally, to quickly have the project all managed, I just set up a spreadsheet and write down features that need to be made. And you can put your name next to each task, and then you can mark off what's done, what's not started, and what's in progress. Next, you also, like any game development, want to prioritize the main features of your game before you add all of the bells and whistles. You also want to have a balanced team with a wide range of skills that will complement each other. You're going to want to reflect on the team skills that you have. If you have too many artists, you will probably want to focus more on a visual aspect of the game rather than implementing crazy mechanics. Next, like I mentioned throughout this entire talk, if you work fast, you can fail fast, and that allows you to identify problems early and pivot in your project if necessary. You will also want to organize your assets so you can keep all of your assets on a base plate in sight for quick implementation, such as keeping them all lined up. Like I showed in this picture, I honestly use this for larger game production as well. We'll have just a entire workspace dedicated to all of the assets in the game. This is really helpful in all cases of game development. Finally, if there is a takeaway that you have in this talk, it is that you want to fail fast, because if you fail fast, you learn fast, you adjust your work fast, and you grow fast. Thank you for listening to my talk on how you can accelerate your career. If you would like to follow me on X or subscribe to my channel, all tags are in the bottom right. And now we can get into questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie, again for the incredible presentation. We already have some questions. So let's go to the first one. The first one is, do you have plans of making any more videos like the one presented at the beginning of the presentation? I
Yeah.
guess that was the first question.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then the second question is, what would you recommend to anyone who is good at modeling and wants to aspire to something higher?
I'm assuming you mean like progress further in modeling. I would suggest probably getting into like substance painters so you can create more high quality materials. Probably also getting more into sculpting because you can create a lot of neat, more natural looking work. Personally, I really love hand painted, styled 3D models, and I think that's a cool way to get better.
Nice. And some creators are asking if you could go over the plugin names again.
Yes, I will go up and get that list. I can just go back. So here, can they see it or is it cut off? I can just say them as well. There is the brush tool, the part 2 terrain tool, the tool grip editor, the rain plugin, and 3D text.
Okay, thank you. And next question is, can we use meshes to script like a door mesh so we can script it? Not, not sure if you gets this question.
I'm not sure what this question means. Are you saying like script a mesh, like a 3D, like script it to be created or like with code? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Let's see if they answer on chat and then we can go back. The next question is, how do I brainstorm a unique game concept?
That is a good question. I think you're gonna honestly just want to think about games that you find fun and work off of that. I don't think it's necessarily about being unique, it's about creating things that you're passionate about.
So, the next one is, what are some tips you can give for advertising, growing a game, or expanding a game's community player base?
I've noticed that taking your games to platforms like TikTok and finding something really funny or interesting about your experience, publishing that can usually gain traction because everybody loves memes.
Awesome. And how do you balance working fast and avoiding feeling crunch?
That is a good question. I think it is really important to have a set amount of hours that you work and also take breaks as often as you can. I think you can have moments of high quality production and still be able to take breaks. It's just about setting aside the time and disciplining yourself to very aggressively focus on the task at hand in the short bursts of time versus working on something for a long amount of time.
Yeah, awesome. And I have a couple more questions. The next one is, what programs do you recommend for 3D modeling?
Blender is free and it is a great platform for 3D modeling. And also, if you have access to Adobe Creative Cloud, it's only like $30 a month. If that is affordable to you, you can get Substance Painter from that, as well as things like Photoshop and stuff. And they're all pretty useful for 3D modeling.
Okay, perfect. And next one is, if you have any tips for younger creators who haven't got much knowledge.
I would just say that you want to think about things that you want to create. You want to break it down into what's necessary to create it and just try to have fun in creating stuff because spending your time reading textbooks probably won't be motivating in actually becoming a creator. It's about getting your hands dirty and actually doing it.
Yes. Next one is, I he just wanted to know if you had any, no, sorry, that was another one. So how long did it take until you could live from developing on Roblox only? And do you think it's harder nowadays?
I do think it can be a bit harder just because trying to find success as a solo developer is obviously risky. I think that there's a lot more job opportunities on Roblox now from larger studios coming in. Um, and it took me a pretty long time. I started developing on Roblox when I was 12, and I didn't entirely find livable success, I would say, until I was 20.
Perfect. Uh, I think those were all the questions we received. So again, thank you, Annie, for everything. I saw a lot of creators asking for the plugins link, so maybe you can share with everyone later on the forum post as well, the links to the
Yeah,
plugins.
I
And
can
thank
send.
you again for the incredible presentation. It was an honor to have you here. And everyone, stay tuned for the next workshop about programming by Wooly Woo next Friday at 10 p.m. PT. Thank you, guys.